We are live on Hard to Hurt. This would be an extension of the Icy Mike Imperfect series where I'm interviewing, figures in the online martial arts community and things like that. Just real quick check, those of you in the chat, how we're coming through as far as audio and video. Is everything looking good and sounding good so that we know that we can get started? Just drop me a comment or something in the chat to let me know that we are up and running and that it's all good. I'll go ahead and tell you guys right now in the chat, we're not doing race and we're not doing politics, right? We are going to talk about those things. Let me take that back. Let me make it clear. We're going to talk about race and politics and how they factor in to use of force. I'll explain more of it later, but I'm gonna tell you guys right now in the chat, nobody cares what your political affiliation is. No, if you're a racist or if you're like a zealot in any direction, one way or the other, save it. It doesn't help and nobody cares. So this is gonna be a productive endeavor. Mind your manners, right? Let's help each other, right? So we are going live to talk about police use of force. I think it's one of the most misunderstood things that there is going on right now. Fundamentally, it's misunderstood by people on both sides. So without getting super political or super racial, because we don't have to discuss this, we're going to give those topics their fair, shake, and we're going to talk about them as important as they are. But ultimately, we can talk about this and figure this out and help people of all political backgrounds, all racial backgrounds. Everyone can understand each other a little bit better if we're honest and we have a dialogue. I have with me Scarface of Streetbeefs. How you doing, Scarface?
How you, brother? Good to be on with you, man. I'm doing great.
We have an ex-con versus ex-cop situation here. I'll let Scarface give his background a little bit. Those of you who've been following the channel know that I was a police officer for many years, considered a use of force expert. People don't like to use the term expert, but I was a training officer, patrol supervisor, SWAT team member, bloodhound handler. I have a background, tons of use of force. I've used every type of police weapon that there is in every type of scenario. And I've even been brutalized by the police myself as a youth. So I have a wide breadth of experience to pull from. Scarface, if you could explain, not that anyone doesn't know who you are, but explain your background and why this conversation is important to you.
Well, first, Mike, I'm sure there is people that don't know me. And by the way, I didn't know you had that background, man. That's amazing. So for me, I did 10 years in prison from youth to adult. I've been in every level of jail, prison, from minimum, work camp to maximum security. I've been involved in many riots in prison where tear gas was shot and the men in black, aka the riot squad, comes in. I've witnessed my mother beat by a cop with a mag light in the late 80s. I was beat 2 separate times by cops while handcuffed. So I've seen police brutality of myself, my family, and I've seen it happen to friends several times. I've also interacted with the police on 2 separate spectrums. When I was a bad guy, I interacted with them and was dealt with as a bad guy. And now that I'm a quote unquote good guy, in my community, I've dealt with them and had some different experiences. So I like to think I'm qualified to talk about citizens and their interactions with police.
It's amazing what happens to us as we grow up, isn't it?
The change, man, the change. It's a total turnaround.
There's 2 things I wanted to touch on. One, a lot of people, Scarface, you commented, I mean, you knew I was a cop. You know what I mean? But
right.
You didn't know about the background. And lots of people are commenting. They're like, whoa, I didn't know you did all that. Here's the problem with YouTube, man. You can't. I would love to like when I'm trying to explain stuff to people, saying, here's my actual background in detail. But it always comes across on like regular YouTube videos. It comes across as like try hard. People will like pick
As
it apart.
Right.
Yeah. And there's so many dudes claiming all kinds of shit that they kind of like ruined the whole idea of like, yeah, I was on a SWAT team. Yeah, I was on a bloodhound handler. But it's funny that when Scarface talks about his background, and it's just funny to show you how he has matured and grown up. When he refers to his old self, he says, when I was the bad guy.
Right.
And that's a big problem, is a lot of people that get themselves in these situations don't know that they are the bad guy in the story. They don't understand that while there are unlawful uses of force, that is a thing. I'm going to talk about them. I've seen them, right? There are lawful uses of force, and that, as a jump-off point, I think one of the things that people fundamentally misunderstand is anytime they see force, if their bias is that they are, perhaps a minority or, a marginalized group of any kind, or their background is they've seen the things that you've seen, or maybe they've even been treated poorly in the past, they tend to think that every use of force that they see, every video that pops up, or every time they see a cop doing everything, every single one of them is unjustified.
Right. And I don't mean to cut you off. Let me start by saying I watch these police use of force videos all the time. I'm not obsessed with them. It's mostly I get sent them by other people. And there's plenty of videos I've seen where I'm like, yeah, dude, you had an ass kicking coming. There's plenty of videos I've seen where citizens are out of control or doing shit they're not supposed to. But there's a pattern also, in my opinion, of certain types of police officers who escalate stuff, who, to me, and I've dealt with this type of officer, as soon as they show up on the scene, you can tell they're revved up. You can tell that they're looking for action. And where they could maybe de-escalate a situation, little moves escalate that situation. Is that every cop? Absolutely not. I've had cops calm me down where I was upset and angry and revved up, and a higher ranking officer come up, okay, sir, listen. And they spoke to me and been able to de-escalate. But I've also had cops, when I was completely calm, rev me up more. So I think that it's a personality trait. I really do.
So I can tell you 100%, and this is what's cool, is I get to tell people this now. 100%, this is a real tactic. A lot of times the police are faced with situations where they feel like, man, if I could just make an arrest, this would be solved. Because, first of all, to understand, I'm not saying that the ends justify the means, but when you put anyone in an almost impossible position, like the police are starting their shift in an impossible situation. Like, I have to make the world a better place, go home safe, handle all my calls, not get in trouble, not end up on YouTube. I have to do all these things, and then they require other people to be reasonable for that to happen. So they're already they're already in an impossible situation. So a lot of times they'll end up on a call, and there's two reasons to do this. One is they're just an asshole. They just want to fight somebody. They want some practice, or they just want to hurt somebody, and there's something like dark and hurting in them. That's a personal thing. That's a certain type of cop. But it is a real thing, and I'll say I've done this, and people, if they don't think about it too hard, they'll be like, oh my God, that's terrible. But I want to go into some more detail. I've been on calls. I've been at a house where maybe there's not an arrest to be made. And I know that if I leave, there's going to be a problem. Right? So I will instantly start looking for the weak link in this whole conflict. Like if it's people, and it's people raising hell and people have been hurt. And I'm like, if I leave, someone's going to die. And everyone's going to want to know why I didn't do anything. So there is a tactic. There is a real known, it's not talked about a lot, but police intentionally intentionally say, I know that if I say the right thing to this dude, I won't be breaking any laws, I won't be breaking any policies, but I know that if I say this, he will break the law. He will do something.
Right.
He will act out. That's manipulation. That's being manipulative. And I've often said, and it's no secret that the skills required to be a good cop and the skills required to be a good criminal are the same skill set. It's just, what do you use them for, evil or for good, for justice or
Right.
for crime? So I have a guy who I think he's going to beat the shit out of his wife if I don't do something. I'm going to leave. He's going to kill her. But he hasn't broken the law yet. And then I think, well, I'm a seasoned, experienced guy who's good at either revving people up or de-escalating. And I say, I got to get him in
Right.
jail. I have to get him in jail. And then I'm forced to choose between my own personal morals,
Right.
society's morals, and then make that all gel with the law. But you are
So
one
let
of...
me ask,
Go ahead.
I don't mean to cut you off. So you gave a scenario where a cop, for good reasons, basically good reasons, will manipulate a situation to enact an arrest. And, in that scenario that you just described, where you feel like domestic violence may lead to death if you don't slightly escalate and enact an arrest, that makes sense. But would you agree there's cops that do it for the wrong reason
Yeah.
as well?
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of times, and what happens anytime you walk on that line, that gray area, and there's people in the chat are like, oh, he about to justify some bullshit, or that's complete garbage. I said I wanted to go into detail because I know that that's what it sounds like. You had a guy, I was going to walk away from him, but do you know how many women, and maybe that speaks more to you, since we're talking about apparently some kind of bro code or some sort of like personal morals, like the way it's likely guys that feel like, oh, that's garbage that he's making. When you watch a woman die a couple of times, when you watched a couple of women die because they were in a situation that they couldn't get themselves out of or wouldn't get themselves out of, and police officers were there, and then police officers left, and then police officers came back the next day, and then police officers left, and that was going on. When you've seen a few people die because you didn't do that thing that I just described, you've now put me in an impossible situation where I have to, do I choose what I think is right, or do I choose what you think is right? Because if I choose what I think is right, some dude with a criminal record this long that ain't never going to be the CEO of a company, I'm not ruining his life by putting a little public disorderly or pedestrian on a highway charge on him. I'm not ruining his life. He's already a 27-time felon. I put him in jail for a night so he can sober up and cool off. And then I sleep okay because I don't go home at 6 o'clock in the morning and try to get in bed and think, damn, is that woman going to die today because I've left that house? So you can think, I don't care. You can think what you want about what I'm saying I did. I'm saying that police do it. But yes, there are police that just like to hurt people, and they just want to gas you up.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Mike. You described one scenario of domestic violence. A lot of these videos we're seeing online of cops escalating stuff are basic traffic stops. You're seeing, there's one video that always stands out to me. And I'm going to ad lib here because I don't remember where it was at, but I can tell you if you look it up, it'll pull right up on YouTube. This cop walks up to a guy in a car, an African-American man, and says, let me see your driver's license. The guy reaches for his driver's license, and the cop, bah, 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 bah.
Yeah, it was in South Carolina. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's just no justifying that. There's no way in my mind, because it's like this. The police supporters come out and say, well, it's because these cops have a dangerous job. They're afraid. They're nervous. I say to you, if you're that nervous, you should be in a different line of work. If you're so nervous that a man reaching for his license causes you to unload a clip in him, you're not in the right line of work. What do you say to that?
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with that case. It was in South Carolina, and so there is no justifying that. And I'm glad you brought that one up, because that one, and now the most recent incident with George Floyd being, clearly, no, that's not justifiable, right?
Right.
It's not justifiable. I would never attempt to justify it, and I would laugh at anyone that would attempt to justify it. With the case of that guy, he said, give me your license. And the guy, what's going on in the guy's brain is he's like, oh, get my license. Okay. You know?
Right.
But the cop filled in a bunch of blanks from that initial stop to, and then what a lot of things when these videos pick up, what they don't realize is like context. Like, is it a routine traffic stop? Are you pulling this car over because it's stolen? Did this guy's wife just say he left with a gun and he said you know what I mean? So there's other things always before the video is rolling, but in that video, he says, hey, show me your license. And the guy goes to get his license and he moves his body physically in the way of like, oh, he's getting a weapon. But the context doesn't support that.
Right.
I can explain that. I can't excuse it or justify it, but I can explain what happened to that dude. The academy fucks you up. In the academy, they put you in scenarios where you can't win. They put you in unwinnable scenarios over and over and over. They've got local hillbilly cops from some jurisdiction playing the roles, right? And they think it'll be fun to like play with they're trying to trick you. And they'll do unrealistic things and give a cop a skewed sense. Like he thinks everyone's trying to kill him. By the time you leave the academy, you think everyone's trying to kill you. Every person that comes near you.
And you can see that in how so let me say this, Mike. So I agree. I agree that this comes from their training. I've said that for years. So the bottom line is change still does need to be made. Regardless of why these guys were trained the way they were, it's obvious that some of this training is having the wrong effect in the streets. Now, again, let me say, dude, there's times I've watched videos and right from the gate, I'm like, that guy was an asshole. He should have known he was going to get shot. He should have known the cops were going to kick his ass. And one time I got beat up by the cops and I knew that I brought it on myself. I'm just going to tell you. But there was another time when I was a teenager, they handcuffed me to a chair and beat the hell out of me over in West Virginia. And I did not deserve it. The point is, I think it all comes back to what you said, training and conditioning of these cops. And I think it starts at the academy. It starts with the supervisors and the people that are training these guys. And I also think there needs to be better psych testing for officers. What do you think about that? I've heard that said before, that psych testing is a real thing. Certain cops probably aren't psychologically fit to deal with the public. Do you agree?
Yeah, the issue is you've got a crappy job that sucks. We've already established the job sucks. Right? You are destined for failure. You pretty much go say, all right, maybe if I don't get killed today, hopefully I won't get fired today. Like that's how every single cop, and especially right now, that's how he's waking up. He's like, I'm either going to get killed or fired today. That's what they're all thinking. So how many smart guys do you think are going and signing up for that job? How many well-adjusted, competent, awesome, amazing guys who are capable of critical thinking under pressure, who have physical skills, psychological skills, and the emotional maturity to properly handle that job? When my first policing job, I got signed up for $26,000 a year. And I had to drive 45 minutes to work every day.
So I once said, and I know this is unrealistic, but I said a while back, you can look at my Facebook post. I was like, dude, they should require a college degree and up the salary for these officers. Now, I know economics probably don't allow that, but I think that if they would require at least some kind of degree and, like you said, pay better, they would get better employees, better options at employee.
Yeah. If you made the
I don't know that it's realistic.
But how do you do it? You make the job better so that you attract better people. But how do you make that job better if it costs money and it takes time?
So we got a conundrum in this, when I'm on Facebook ranting and raving and angry, I've been angry since the death of George Floyd. I won't get too deep into it except to say that this has brought me more anger than almost any case I've seen. And I'll tell you, people ask me, well, what's the solution, Face? You're on your rant and raving. What's the solution? Look, buddy, I'm not saying that I know the solution. Okay. And it's not my job to know the solution. Our politicians who are hired for this shit, they're supposed to know the solution. And we haven't seen it yet, you know?
Yeah.
But I do. Go ahead.
I have the beginnings of a solution. And that's kind of what this conversation is about. And I think understanding, you can't change shit until you understand it. You can't change someone's
Correct.
mind till you identify with them or empathize with them. You can't, your perspective, you have to get outside of your own perspective. So I thought that the chance to explain use of force completely, answer any questions, and I don't like to do too much use of force content on my channel, I've said before, because it's not fun, and I do my channel for fun, but I do occasionally realize, well, this is important and it needs to be done, and I can do it, so I'll, do it. People misunderstand use of force because they don't know what actual force is, and a lot of times they don't know what resisting arrest means. Particularly, and now without, occasionally race is going to come up in this conversation. The things that I'm saying could help anyone that finds themselves under police investigation or police using force against them. Now, if a certain portion of the population is disproportionately affected by that, then this advice will disproportionately help them. So some people are you trying to say this is what black people should do? No, I'm saying this is what people should do, but the current problem and the current questions that we have tend to fall back on race. My experiences in policing, I policed an area that was 95% black. 95% black. And
South Carolina has a huge black population.
They loved me, let me tell you, right? So from the get-go, I got out of the car and got to experience firsthand bias and racism. Like, I got out of the car to say, hey, what's going on? And they immediately, not everyone, but I knew what it felt like to have assumptions made about me immediately. Oh, he must be a racist. I get out of the car, I'm a racist, right? I drive by a guy. This is what I always told young guys when they were like, you've seen the videos where the cop walks up to the guy and the guy says, first thing, why are you fucking with me? Why are you fucking with me, man? I didn't do anything. Why are you fucking with me?
And can we come back to that? Because I want to give that guy's perspective.
Yeah, because, well, I want to help him. Because I used to tell young guys when they'd say this, I'd be like, well, here's what happened. Now that I've shared some air with you and I can like kind of see how you are and what type of person you are and what you're upset about. And I don't have any other, right. I don't like smell drugs on you and you're not wearing a ski mask climbing out of a window. Like, I'm just talking to you. And I can tell that this is what happens. It's a cycle. A guy gets mistreated by the police, or a guy thinks he was mistreated by police, either justly or unjustly, whatever. Right. He sees the police go by and he thinks, they're going to fuck with me.
Right.
So then he starts behaving suspiciously. And I was driving by, minding my own business. I'm like, why is that guy looking at me? What is he doing? Why is he acting funny? And he starts trying to adjust his pants or go dart behind a building or whatever. So I'm like, I've been sent to this neighborhood because I'm supposed to be here and make sure people's houses aren't getting broken into, people aren't getting hurt. So I'm like, well, let me go see what he's doing. And now he's like, oh, I knew it. He was going to turn around on me. And I'm like, so then he goes like this, and then they run, right? The guy's running. Right. And now I'm like, again, in this impossible situation, he's running because he thinks I'm going to unjustly fuck with him. I'm going to fuck with him because he's acting weird. And that's literally my job, is to see suspicious behavior and go investigate it. So it becomes this cycle. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Where have you ever played poker?
Yes.
When you've got pocket kings and they've got ace king and neither one of y'all can get away from the hand, it's like we're both doing what we're supposed to be doing,
Right.
He's trying to protect himself. I'm trying to figure out why he's acting so strange and hiding behind things, or throwing a bag away right as I drive by because he's worried that I'll think he has something in that bag. But now I only think he has something in the bag because he threw it away.
Well, can I say this? So, back to what you were talking about when you started patrolling the neighborhood, and it's 95% black. I honestly believe that's part of the problem. And this, I don't know how this is going to sound, if this is going to offend some people, but I don't believe they should bring in white police officers from the county to police urban areas that are all black, because it's already an attitude where you can't really recognize or relate to each other. And it gives this feeling like they're bringing in overseers from out in the county to regulate the city. But I want to talk about, you described the police officers day, and it really put things into perspective for me. So let me describe the
Let
young
me get
man.
this comment real quick. Rashad Coop asked an excellent question. He said, "But is this your same course of action in communities that are predominantly white, Mike?" Why no? Because that scenario doesn't play out as often in those communities. If someone was behaving suspiciously, I would go investigate. But what I'm talking about and what Scarface is about to speak on is that guy in that predominantly black community that I'm talking about has a different experience. His mindset, how
Right?
he woke up that day, is totally different. And that's what I think Scarface is about to describe.
That's exactly. So that young man probably has already had a cousin or an uncle or an aunt who was wrongfully arrested or wrongfully harassed, wrongfully profiled, etc., or at least in their mind. Okay. So he's already got that in the back of his head. A lot of these people from low income neighborhoods, be it white, black, Hispanic, or other, are struggling to make ends meet, are struggling to pay bills, or some struggling to eat. So they're already frustrated. They wake up, they've got it in the back of their head already that the police are there to harass them. They see you, they don't recognize you. You're not from their world. You're not from their neighborhood, and you're looking at them. They've already got it in their head. The cops are here to keep me in line, to harass me, and to throw me in jail if they don't like something I do. So it's kind of like they're already rearing up for a confrontation based on past experiences they've either had or their families either had. Well, so-called logical people will say, well, just be logical. You're not doing nothing wrong. The cops won't harass you.
That's what they're
Well, that's
saying.
BS.
That's what they're saying in the comments. They're like, man, why are you like, I'm telling you, because when I drove by, he started like taking a bunch of quick turns and trying to hide behind stuff and throwing stuff in a bush, you know?
Right. Well, and look, again, sometimes we got to look from both angles. And I can't relate because I wasn't a police officer with what requirements you had on you and the expectations. But I'll just say that I have been around cops that have pulled up on me, and I got nervous.
Yep.
And I was like, and I'm sure I came off as nervous. And then I got standoffish. I'll give you an example. My brother, my half brother, years ago, his house was broken into. He had a bunch of shit stolen. So he called the cops. Now the county sheriffs here in this area, I'm sorry, dude, they're just they're backwards. That's all I'm going to say. So they come to take my brother, who is a victim, take his police report. So I get there, and this cop is screaming at my brother, well, this is bullshit. This is false in this report. There's no way you lost this. So he immediately comes over to me. Now, I'm just a family member who just pulled up. What are you doing here? What do you want? I said, I'm here to support my brother. He was just robbed. He said, oh, your inspection sticker's dead on your car. Get out of the car. I'm like, wait the fuck a minute. Are you serious? So guess what I thought?
Yeah.
I thought immediately it had to be because race. What else was it? Why else would this guy be treating a victim and the brother of a victim in such a manner?
Well,
So of course I got standoffish.
yeah.
And you know what's crazy? As soon as I said, this is some racist bullshit, he backed up and said, you know what? Get the fuck out of here. And he let me go. But I still wasn't allowed to sit there and support my brother. If
Yeah.
I would have, I'd have probably went to jail. So it's incidents like that. Then I told friends about it. So now my friends have that in their mindset. And it's a cycle, bro.
It is a 100% cycle. And someone said that it's BS because what I'm using is circular reasoning. That's not my reasoning. That's what's happening. I just described it from one end. Scarface just described it from the other end. This is not shit that we think is happening. This is what's happening. Now, so the thing is about your experience is that's not unique. That's common. There are cops. Two big problems. There's two big problems with the perspective that a cop automatically has it in for you, which skews the rest of the encounter. You know, you start off on a wrong foot. Cop acts like an asshole. Right. You're like, you know, fuck this guy. Or if I'm like, hey, how's it doing? And you're like, why are you messing with me? I was like, well, because the guy across the street said, you know, like, it's like right. When you have had a terrible day and you snap at your wife for no reason. And then, right. And then she starts yelling at you, and you're like, "Man, why is this chick nagging me?" You know, like you just snapped at her.
Right.
So one big problem, and this is, I would love for you to challenge one of my biases. We've known each other a long time, and what's cool about me and Scarface's friendship is we disagree on a lot of things and agree on a lot of things. We have a lot of we're very distinct people. I want you to challenge me on one of my biases. But I want to challenge you on one of yours. I'm not going to speak to the world or speak to all people of a certain background or whatever, but I want to challenge you on one of your biases. If I was to pull up on a whatever and arrest you for whatever, or strike you with a baton, or spray you with pepper spray, or tase you, or even just cuss at you, or even just look at you funny, I might be doing that because you're black or because of whatever. I might be doing that because of race. But you are definitely saying I'm doing that because of race because I'm white. I might be using force. I might be arresting the guy because I'm a racist and I don't like black people. But unless I yelled, I am arresting you because you're black, you know, you can have that gut feeling, but, you know, gut feelings are often, and they're often right. Now, let's be clear. What I'm actually saying. I'm not saying it's not racism. I'm saying that when you see a white cop do something and you think one thing that you wouldn't think if a black cop did the same thing. And now we're getting...
Can I say, brother?
Yeah, go ahead.
You picked the one wrong person to say that with, because...
Well, no, wait.
I experienced black cops that are worse than the white cops, and they show out for their white coworkers, and I believe there's psychology behind that I'm not going to get into.
Don't say it. Don't. We're not going there.
I'm into it. But no, if I would feel the same way if it was a black cop or a white cop harassing me, because I believe that black cops in bad neighborhoods profile as well. I believe that police officers in general profile minorities. Do I think white cops from the county who have never lived in the inner city are more likely to do so? Yes, I do. And I think, again, it's natural psychological and sociological reasons for that.
Right.
However, I do think black and Latino cops do it just as badly. There was a cop up in Detroit called RoboCop who was a Latino cop, who was one of the most hated cops in Detroit. He was known for racially profiling and brutalizing people, and he was a quote-unquote minority.
Yeah.
So in my instance, I'm not going to think it just because you're a white cop. I'm going to think it because you're a cop.
Yeah.
But now others, that may differ.
Right. And I think we should... That's the only bias that I would like people to confront. That's the only contribution I have as far as race is concerned. Racism exists. Racism is real. There are people in positions of authority who are racist. All those things are true, but not everybody that's doing those things is that. And
I'll guarantee it. I agree 100%.
And so if you think that some good old boy from out in the woods who was raised in a certain time period in a certain geographical location doesn't have biases, you're wrong about that too. Everybody. The guy in the inner city and the guy in the trailer park and the guy out in BFE, they all have biases. But what I
Facts.
just, if you want, and now if you don't care about people valuing your opinion, think whatever you want and
Right.
say whatever you want. But if you
Right.
want, like if I want you to hear me and understand
Right.
me, I can't say you're just saying that because you're a minority.
Right. That's that's too dismissive and too just ridiculous. No,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, and now stereotypes, that's the other, like, stereotypes didn't just spring into existence. Stereotypes get created based off a shred of truth. And
So can I say so? I'm glad you said the word stereotype because I think oftentimes people confuse racism with stereotypical. Okay. I think a lot of people are very stereotypical and assume things based on appearance. I still don't know that they're necessarily racist. Okay. I think racist is a totally different thing than stereotypical.
yeah.
And I think that a lot of people are stereotypical without even realizing they are. Honestly.
Yeah, well, they were raised. It's like when Bill Burr did a bit on the Duck Dynasty guy when the Duck Dynasty guy got in trouble for saying some racist remarks, and Bill Burr
Right.
said, "Well, what did you think that he thought? Like he lives in the swamp and has a beard down to here and got famous for making duck calls that are all like, what did you think? He doesn't know.
Right.
If you're taught something when you're a kid, and you might be taught." Always do what the police say when you're a kid. Or you might grow up and say, every time the police come around, they're there to hurt you or hurt your family. And that's what you start the interaction thinking. So now,
Right.
so now we've started the interaction. And I want to talk about the actual physical use of force so that we can relate this to fighting, martial
Correct.
arts, self-defense. This is going to be, I want not only to help anyone listening understand what use of force really is, not just because if you are maybe the victim of unlawful use of force, which exists and I've seen it. Do you know Scarface? And I'm gonna go ahead and tell you now. It's scheduled for later, but I've had someone die in my custody,
Oh wow. Mike, of course I didn't know that.
and
I'd love to hear the story.
right, and I want you to go ahead and formulate questions about that. I mean, like I've had someone I was arresting die while I was like during that whole process. We'll get into more details later. But use of force, one of the things, Scarface, that I think, and it kind of relates to a young man of any race or any background who automatically thinks that the police are messing with him, will then behave in a way that if the police officer had never noticed him, now he's like, well, why is he hiding behind that thing? Why is he doing like this? Is that I was supposed to be looking for a guy around this area around, in the squad room, they said there was a little guy that was always walking around in here with like, and they give a general description, and then you see a guy that kind of matches it, and that's not enough, but now he starts
Right.
acting funny, right? So now we have
Right.
more, so we can at least drive by
Right.
again. But now let's talk about the actual putting of hands on that person. There's some misconceptions I want to clear up, and you probably know most of them, but when I want you to help me help other people get clarity on this. The
Okay.
police need reasonable suspicion to physically stop you from moving around in public. Reasonable suspicion it's not a lot.
Can be anything.
It's not a lot. Now, if you just
Right.
start acting funny, and I say, hey, why are you acting funny? And you turn around and go, oh, I was looking for my keys. Oh, look, I found my keys. Then that interaction's over. But if you're acting funny and then I go to stop you and you're like, why are you messing with me? And I'm like trying to explain and you're like, leave me alone, and you start moving away, you're raising the level of the officer's suspicion. So now he's not only legally, and that's the thing is the law, there's plenty of law. There's the Fourth Amendment, there's Graham v. Connor, there's plenty of laws that decide what the officer is legally justified in doing. Your feelings, your personal feelings are nowhere in there. Your mama's feelings are nowhere in there. The own officer's feelings are nowhere in there. The only difference is if he has those biases and feelings, he gets to initiate based off of them, which is how we're going to get into the unlawful uses of force. But the thing is, he's lawfully allowed to detain you at this point.
Right.
A big misconception, we're going to get over one big hurdle. You can have done nothing illegal and broken no laws, and the police can legally detain you.
Yep. I know that for a fact.
Right. And people be like, what did the comments say before they even show up? They're going to say, that's bullshit. But I'm telling you, if a bald guy of ambiguous ethnicity, right, in a
Right.
yellow Streetbeefs t-shirt, slapped me in the mouth and then ran out the door, and I called the police, right, and gave the description, and then you were walking down the street and they jumped out and they said, hey, stop, and you say, I didn't do anything. You know you didn't do anything, right? They're
Right.
legally, there's enough there that they're legally allowed to detain you to find out if you did. And young guys who didn't do anything, or they think the police don't, then let's be honest, a lot of them are just, they think the police don't know enough to know that they did anything. But whether you did
Right.
anything or not has zero bearing on whether they can initially stop you.
Right. Well, and let me just say, remark on that. I think that should change. I think there should be a little bit more requirement. I think that's where a lot of this starts, because American citizens want to feel like they can move freely. And we want to believe if we did nothing wrong, leave us the fuck alone. And I get it. The police have a job to do. But again, I think it starts with better work from the top, better intelligence. Like when you said they give a basic description of some guy, so on and so forth. I know they got a job to do that, but that should not be enough to go out into the neighborhood and detain people. There was an incident, real quick, up in Boston. I can't remember the details, but you can look this up. There was a killing up in Boston years ago. It was in the 80s. And there was a very, very false description of the assailant given. They went and shook down the entire black neighborhood, rousted people, roughed people up, then found out it was all BS. It was actually a white guy that did it. And it just goes to show how wrong the intelligence you get can be, and why we shouldn't be allowed to go rouse people based on basic intelligence.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, well, it's a hard line to draw. It's easy for the guy who just got robbed to draw the line and say, I want you to stop every car coming out of my neighborhood. I just got robbed. Stop every car. Stop everybody.
Right.
If there's been 3 break-ins this week in my neighborhood, I want you to stop everybody that's out after midnight.
Right.
That's what the guy that got robbed thinks. Now, the guy who likes to walk his dog late, the line for him is, you shouldn't stop me at all. I don't care. You need to have me on video with facial ID recognition before you even stop to ask me my name. Now, the
line's somewhere in between.
Somewhere in between is hard to pick.
It's somewhere in between. Yeah.
So if we reach the understanding, so if you are a pedestrian walking and a police officer stops you and you realize that if someone could get over the hurdle of thinking I haven't done anything wrong, or I don't think he knows I've done anything wrong, right? That interaction can be super short and not really interfere with your life.
Right.
The problem is the two sides have a bias, and that bias, the officer's bias and the citizen's bias, is what prolongs that encounter or turns it physical. If you think so there's people saying they have to, so there's so many misconceptions. They have to state why or what law you have broken. That's not correct. That's just factually not correct, and people look like fools when they ask, what's the charge? What's the charge? What's the charge? What's the charge? And the guy's like still wrestling with you. He doesn't have to talk with you while he's wrestling with you or your friend or your family member.
I've been arrested and didn't get the warrant till I got to jail. So they don't, and I know for a fact they don't immediately have to declare the charge.
Right. When you have to tell a person, you have to tell a person. And that's pretty much the rule. That's the beginning and the end of the rule. You have to tell them.
At some point.
Yeah, it doesn't. When is a matter of policy, the individual department's policy, or when it makes sense. If you're wrestling with me and I'm fighting with you in the food court at the mall, and I'm swatting your hands away saying, what's the charge? What's the charge? What's the charge? Now's not the time to have court. You need to get the handcuffs on me so that I can't hurt you anymore, and make sure like no one else is going to hurt you, and then maybe even get to me to the car and then say, okay, you're under arrest for this. But you don't have to have broken a law to be detained temporarily. You
Now, Mike, can I say this? And I know what you're saying there is a fact. I want to say, kind of on the whole subject, there is biases on both sides, and what you're saying as a good point about the police have a right to detain you. I just feel like because of the title and duty of police officers, it should be their job, first and foremost, to de escalate with the public. I feel like, first and foremost, it should be their job to keep things at an even keel. Now, look, I get it. These cops get shown videos at the academy of officers who did the wrong thing get blown away,
yeah.
so they think every citizen has a 44 Magnum in his pocket ready to kill them.
They grow up. Basically, I say grow up. They're adults when they start, but that's how they're brought up thinking that.
So that's the department's fault. I feel like that's the department's fault. And I feel like, again, a lot of times when I see these situations escalated, I'll say, yes, the citizen was being a bit of a dick too, but the man whose sworn duty is to protect and serve should be the one trying to de-escalate. In my opinion, I've seen several shootings where if the cop had taken a step back, called his backup, said, okay, relax, man, relax, and got his back up there, and they all, tried to de-escalate the situation first, it could have been de-escalated. Am I saying every situation? Of course not.
Yeah.
But there is some.
There's a big problem. There's a big problem with in police, and it's called police culture. The police is a culture. That's a
right.
That's a strong identifier. Police officers become brothers because they risk their lives together. Just like,
right.
And I'm not romanticizing it. Soldiers do it too. Crooks do it too. Gang members do it with each other. Anyone that you risk your life with, that's your brother. I got accused of racism, obviously, as a white police officer. And I remember distinctly at my partner, we called him Honey Mustard, right? That was his handle, Honey Mustard.
Right.
Me and Honey Mustard had arrested this guy. And this guy took issue with the fact that Honey Mustard, who was a black guy, was with me and not with him on this, And
right.
he said,
right.
and he said to Honey Mustard, he says, you're supposed to be with me. You're supposed to have my back. And Honey Mustard puts his
right.
arm around my neck and he says, no, this is my brother. Right? He
right.
said, now we're talking about a guy who beat his girlfriend within an inch of her life and that sort of thing. You know what I mean? A real bad guy, a true bad guy. But
right.
the problem within police culture, that brotherhood, is that the types of things that they would do. So say you're a good guy, you're a good citizen that's not doing anything wrong. The types
right.
that it gets reinforced because the bad police tactics or the tactics that we have a problem with,
right,
work really well on real bad guys.
Right.
If I go,
not everybody's a real bad guy.
Right.
Not everybody's a tri-state shooter on a rampage.
So he gets reinforced. I was a killer at interrogations. I was really good in interrogations. Really good. If
I can see that. Right?
you could probably infer. I would go in a room and come out with a confession almost every time. And they'd always say, "Good job, man. Wow, great job." But if I didn't get the confession, it was, "Mike, you can't talk to people that way."
Right.
But the way I was talking would have worked on a bunch of bad guys. So now
it's good if it works. Right.
So now you've got guys that have been reinforced to do things that good people, good law-abiding citizens who are in fact minding their own business, not doing anything, would take offense to. And,
right.
And the officer now, he has two choices, and I want to touch on that sliding scale thing I talked about earlier, the more extreme version. He has two choices. Does he use force or his presence or even his words against somebody that would elicit a confession or give him more evidence of a crime or do that? Or does he say, you know what, if this guy didn't do it, this will hurt his feelings or maybe even hurt his body, so I better not. The system should be designed to protect innocent people, and it mostly is. Far more guilty people get to go free than innocent people. And now, listen, people in the comments. Innocent people do get convicted of crimes.
Right.
Guilty people get to go free
more than innocent people.
1,000 times. Yeah.
There was an old saying, I would rather see 10,000 guilty men go free than one innocent man be convicted.
Abso-fucking-lutely. It should be designed that way. The problem where the two sides, and we come back to, as you said, that line is somewhere in the middle. How do we pick it?
Right.
The police tactics, and so police culture tends to reinforce these. Oh, you with the sticker, the guy complaining about your sticker on your car or whatever. Like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? And I've worked with guys like that. Now, the thing is, that dude probably, dudes that act like that put a lot of criminals in jail. They make a lot of cases. They find a lot of stolen property. They do a lot of good, but
they also hurt the
in exchange, they're hurting people. Yeah, they're diminishing trust, and they're hurting people. Every time an investigator lies in an interrogation, right, to get a confession, which he's allowed to do, and there's a lot of confusion, and still, I wish people just would understand that your feelings don't matter. There's people that have said that the things I've described about what the police are allowed to do as far as detaining you if you haven't committed a crime, they're saying that that's unconstitutional. No, it's not. It's plainly in the Constitution and the subsequent case law that is interpreted. You're just factually wrong. And so long as you're factually wrong, you guys in the comments that think that the police that they legally can't do these things, as long as you're factually wrong when you go to argue about it, the people who know better won't listen. So if you want the government to listen to you, you have to be right about the accusations. I'm not saying that there's not racism. I'm not saying that there's not unlawful uses of force. I'm just saying that a lot of the times the things you're complaining about are not those things.
Yeah, they've got a lot of, for the people listening, police have a lot more wiggle room than you realize. They do. And legally, they have a lot more wiggle room.
And maybe they shouldn't. I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I'm just saying that that's what is happening.
Yeah. I think that they shouldn't have the wiggle room they have to stop and accuse citizens. But I'm telling a lot of y'all they do. There's been numerous times where I've been arrested and I thought I was going to argue certain shit on the stoppage. One big misconception is that they have to read you your Miranda rights. Dude, I'm a 6-time convicted felon. I've been charged with over 50 felonies, and I've never been read my Miranda rights. Not once. Okay? It's a huge misconception. And again, I think that some of this shit should be reined in and they shouldn't have as much leeway as they do. But unfortunately, some people out there are miseducated on what they're allowed to do. And that can put you in a bad position because if you sit there and argue with them thinking that you're legally in the right and you're not, then you end up getting arrested and you don't have a leg to stand on,
So now we've got a guy, through whatever reason, he's now having physical force applied to him. And, we've passed the officer can detain you whether or not you've committed a crime, and people are still arguing that that's not true. You're just wrong. Like, I would love to just continue to debate that's just not correct. CW is one of them, and he's saying refuse the Miranda rights, invoke your constitutional rights. Well, you're just wrong because you can't refuse your Miranda rights. They are your rights. You already have them. You can't get, you can waive them, right? If you want to talk, invoke your constitutional rights. Also, not really a thing because you already have them. They exist whether you invoke them or not. The officer can't unreasonably detain you. You are allowed to say what you want. You have all the protection of the amendments in the Constitution. You're just flat out wrong. But let's move past that
And
because
if those constitutional rights are violated, you're not going to dispute that at the arrest. That's something that gets disputed in the court system.
I
You know,
wish guys would, and now I wish guys would understand that. I would love that if a cop was screwing up and someone said, "Hey, he was blah 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 blah," that it would be possible for the cop to go, "Oh, okay." But if you're already fighting and struggling with them or arguing and yelling and there's already a lot going on, we got to go to
they're
court.
not going to hear you when you're saying you're violating my constitutional right. But no, they're still going to take you to jail, and that's going to be something you have to fight in the court system and through complaints, etc. The worst time to fight it, and I'm telling you guys this as somebody who rants about police brutality every day. I've lost friends behind this shit, well, so-called friends, over the last week. Don't fight with these cops at the arrest. Don't do it.
You can't
Because
win.
you're not going to win that battle. They're going to call for backup. They're going to give you a bunch of humbug charges, and then you're going to have to fight it in court. Just wait. Do whatever they tell you. Go in and fight that shit later and burn them at court.
Yeah, and
That's
it's
my opinion.
and do you know what's really funny is people, and now we've got the problem that the courts, there's lack of trust in the courts because people might think that, well, the courts and the police, that's all the same side, right? I didn't get a fair shake in the street. I'm not going to get a fair shake in court. Maybe, I'm not gonna try to argue and make you think that you will get fair treatment if you already don't think you're being treated fairly. But it's very rare that someone gets killed unlawfully in a courtroom, So if you really 100% think that you're being detained unlawfully and you think the police are out of line and you think they shouldn't be doing any of this, okay, I might even be with you. I've watched videos where that's true. The most recent one, that's definitely true. You'll be hard-pressed to find police officers that say there's never unlawful uses of force. And when you show clearly unlawful uses of force to good police officers, they're like, yeah, no, you can't do that. You definitely can't do that.
Right.
But in the courtroom, even if you get railroaded, you won't get hurt or act, knock on wood. What I'm saying is you can't win on the side of the road. You can't win in the parking lot. You can't win the night of the incident. You cannot win a physical battle with the police. You can't.
Right. And I said, listen, people of all races and colors, if you're out there and you're fighting with the police and getting your butt kicked and getting shot and getting tased, it's not a good look. You got a cop that's already revved up that feels you're in the wrong. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. Resisting and citing the Constitution is not going to help you at that point. And I'm telling you, there's other ways to fight. I was arrested, and I'll make this quick because it's kind of off subject. I won 2 habeas corpuses. I was one of the few people in the state of Pennsylvania to ever win 2 habeas corpuses. I was wrongfully arrested and wrongfully convicted twice. Now, let me be clear. I have done crimes, just not the crimes they charged me with. They trumped them way up.
Right.
I knew that they had hit me with trumped up charges. Now, I could have, as soon as the cop came to arrest me, hit him and knocked all his teeth out. Then I'd have just had another valid charge. Okay? Instead, when they arrested me, I said, oh, I'm going to have to fight this shit. I filed my habeas corpus, and I won it twice. So there is recourse. Now, am I saying the court system always gets it right? No, there's courts that have sentenced people wrongfully to death. So I don't trust them either. But you've got a better chance fighting in the court system than you do fist fighting cops.
You have a better chance. And now some people still confused, man. Some people still confused. They don't realize we're trying to help you. Both of us are trying to help you. What the fuck are you two talking about? Cops are killing unarmed people on camera and getting away with it in court. What the fuck are you two talking about? Okay, we're talking about not being the guy that they killed, dude. We're talking about not being that guy. I'm not saying that these uses of force are justified. Once again, for the people in the back who don't get it, Scarface and I are not talking about how it should be. We are talking about how it is. That's an important thing to learn.
Mike, I think that some folks logged onto this thinking that we were going to have a direct discussion about the recent murder of George Floyd, etc. Look, I'm down to get into that.
Well, we
I'm
can.
talking,
I,
yeah,
I
I'm talking in general. But I will say this in regards to George Floyd, fucking inexcusable. There's no justification for what was done. I hope the cop gets convicted and goes to prison. The other three that stood there on the side should be arrested as well. That's where I stand. What I'm telling y'all is don't give them a chance to kill you. Don't give them a chance. Just when the cops roll up on me, I cooperate. That's it. Even when I know they're wrong, then you know what? The last time it happened, and I'm not going to go into detail because there's still some action pending. But I had a cop just last year roll up on me with two of his buddies, and there was an interaction that should not have happened. I was calm. I said, "You got it, buddy. No problem." As soon as they left, I hauled ass down to the precinct, filed a written report, written complaint, and now their ass is in hot water.
yeah.
Okay? I'm not going to give them a chance to kill me. It's not going to happen. All I'm saying is, and I'm not saying George Floyd gave them a chance. From what I've seen, George Floyd didn't resist at all. He didn't deserve what he got. But in some of these instances, they struggle and don't struggle. Just don't struggle at all. Fucking go file a complaint and burn their asses. That's my stance.
When it comes to, so just to be totally clear, since George Floyd is the hot button issue.
Right.
Nobody. Now I know there's people that believe that aliens live in their basement. So there are people that believe anything, but there's
Right.
nobody. And this is one thing. We're not going to get into politics. We're not going to talk about rioting. We're here to talk about police use of force. If you are,
Right.
and I understand, and Scarface talked about, it doesn't matter if the cops are wrong or not. One of the hardest lessons I've had to teach my son is that when something, like, to keep his mouth shut when he knows something wrong is happening, because he's not mature. That's a sign of maturity, is to know something's wrong and to be like, okay, I can deal with this for now. We can take care of it later. That's a hard thing to do when your emotions are telling you to react, right?
It's the old saying, there's a time and place for everything.
Yes.
And there's a forum to fight and a forum not to fight.
Now, when we talk about the George Floyd thing, this is what I want you guys to understand, so there's not too much division, because there really is no division on this issue. Besides the idiots. The George Floyd incident is 100% unequivocally, totally unjustified, and there's nobody, and when I say nobody, I mean nobody. There's
Right.
nobody that disagrees with that. The people that do disagree with that are nobody, right? They might
Right.
exist, but they're nobodies. The police are like, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. So what has happened with this particular case, when it comes to, we had a police officer using force unlawfully against a person who was not resisting. That did happen. That's wrong. That's evil. He should rot in jail.
Right. So indisputable. I don't think anybody with logic would dispute it. And I'm not going to go through the list. There's more than George Floyd. There's a lot of names that I could rant off and ramble about that I know were basically murdered on camera by police officers. However, what I'm saying, for anybody to miss it, because I don't want people to misunderstand my stance. I don't believe police should escalate and kill people. I don't believe police have a right to stop us for no reason. I don't believe police have a reason to profile and a right to do so. What I'm saying is, don't fight your battle in the street, because you will lose that battle. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm saying fight your battle in the proper place. And I think some of you are misunderstanding that. Now, again, with the riots and protests, I agree with the protests. Okay? And I'm getting a lot of flack for that, because I'm not criticizing the rioters or the protesters, because there is a time to fight your battles in the street as far as that goes. What I'm saying is, in a one-on-one stop with police officers, Be cool and file your complaint later. That shit's going to be on
Look,
camera. That's my
look,
thing.
they're already misunderstanding it. Because what did I say? I said keep your mouth shut when something wrong is happening, and everyone's got a problem with that. But is that what I said? Keep your mouth shut when something wrong is happening? You know, how backwards is that? What's the problem with that? How can you say to keep your mouth shut? Well, we're saying to do that because it won't do any good, and it might do harm, not only to your cause, but maybe to your body, right? Like, it won't help. When my wife is yelling at the kids and Maddox has something that's kind of smart and he's kind of got a point and he wants to speak up, right? I'm like, nah, dude, we'll take care of it later. We'll take care of it later. We're not saying to keep your mouth shut. We're not saying don't protest. We're not saying don't stand up for your rights. We're saying to do it in an effective way.
Right.
Sorry, I want you.
Arguing with a cop.
I want you to be heard.
Is not going to. It's not going to do the job. It's going to get you hurt. I don't want to see more people hurt by police. I don't. Again, I'm not going to get into the riots and protests. I'll just say I'm going to a protest in D.C. tomorrow. I'm going to a vigil tonight. I agree with the protest. What I'm saying is, in these one-on-one scenarios, do not put yourself in a position to be murdered. That's all I'm saying. I won't dwell on the subject. I just don't want anybody to misunderstand me.
Yeah. A guy asked me, so what could have George Floyd done different according to your logic, Mike? That question makes no sense. He didn't do anything. He didn't do anything. And I don't even care. I don't care at all if he committed a crime or didn't commit a crime, or even if he ever did resist arrest in the beginning, or if there's some new footage that comes up that shows him doing something else. That doesn't even matter because the situation changes as it evolves. If you showed me a video of a guy killing 100 people, right, but then being murdered by a police officer, I wouldn't think, oh, well, yeah, that's not how use of force works. Use of force changes and evolves as the situation. That guy was not doing anything. He shouldn't have done anything different. He was the victim of a crime. He had his civil rights violated.
He was murdered.
And he was murdered. Like, you don't hear what I'm saying because of your own biases. And that's why I invited Scarface here, hopefully as a buffer between my biases and your biases as you feel a certain kind of way about it. But I feel the same way as you. I feel the same way as you, Scarface. Right?
Makes you angry.
I'm unbelievably angry. The only peace and clarity I have it because of my experience, right? He was murdered. The guy murdered him by using unlawful force, right? Mm-hmm. He was fired, and now he's been charged.
Right.
Right? I would love as a private citizen to beat the shit out of the guy.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But that's not right. That is the same as a police officer who knows. I'll tell you one story. The one time I almost used unlawful force. I almost used unlawful force on a guy. A guy beat the shit out of his mom. He beat her so bad, he broke her ribs, he broke her nose. Her face was unrecognizable. He beat her to a pulp in her own house. And we've been to this house a bunch of times because he beat her ass all the time and stole her car all the time, and he was a drug addict and she wouldn't get rid of him. So I said, I'm going to fix his ass, right? So he finally beat her bad enough that she wanted to press charges, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I waited outside his house. We took his mom somewhere else. She went to the hospital. I waited in the bushes outside his house for hours until he came home. And I jumped out and I got him to get on the ground. And I've never in my life wanted to hurt a person more than I wanted to hurt that guy right then.
Right.
You know? And had I done it, most of the people that would cry about police brutality, they're speaking not from legal standpoint, but from their morals and their own personal beliefs.
Right.
Had I done that, you'd be hard pressed to find a lot of these same dudes having a problem with it. They'd have been like, yeah, that dude needed his ass whipped.
Right.
Right. And I could not do it. And of all the calls, that's one of the ones that sticks with me the most, is that moment where I was looking at him, and it was 2:00 in the morning in his backyard, and there wasn't a soul around. And I wanted to beat him so bad. I couldn't do it. He was like, okay, he knew it. He must have felt it coming. And,
Right.
you know, guys that beat women, you've said this before, guys that beat women, they're cowards. They don't want to fight
Right.
a man. They don't want to fight the police. You know what I mean? I wanted to beat him. So I've been on every side of this. I had my ass kicked when I was 18 by the Casey Police Department. They beat the shit out of me and put a gun to my head and slammed me on the pavement and put me in handcuffs and kept the gun to my head while I was in handcuffs because a friend of mine in a different car that I was following stole a pumpkin. Right? I have been on every side of this.
Right.
Scarface is an ex-con who now gets invited to speak at colleges about preventing violence and about keeping people from hurting each other. We have been there. We have been where you are. We've been where they are. We've been everywhere in between.
Right.
We are only speaking, trying to help you. When I tell you what the police are legally allowed to do, it's not because I think they should be. I have no opinion. Luckily, I'm able to sterilize myself when I speak about this stuff and keep, at least on the use of force side, I can keep my biases out of it. But
Right.
I do want to touch on two more things. One, that in custody death, right? Because when I say I've been on every side of this, I mean I've been on every side of this, right? But two little tips that will help you. One, you don't have to have committed a crime or feel like you have committed a crime in order to be detained, arrested, or have force used on you. You don't. Maybe you should. That's what Scarface is arguing. We need to more clearly define the line, right?
Right.
A lot of people are confused about what resisting is. They will watch a video and you'll hear the crowd yelling, he's not resisting. And I'm watching the video going, well, no, he's definitely resisting. Like, maybe he should be. Maybe the cops shouldn't have screwed with him in the beginning. Who cares? That's the point. Is a lot of times people are resisting and other people don't think they are, or they themselves don't think they are. Prime example, the number one. Go ahead and argue. Go ahead and argue. I can explain why this is resisting. The cop has you in handcuffs or has your hands behind your back before he's cuffed him, and he tells you to go over there, right? And you start to walk over there, and then you do this, right? And you're like, man, why are you pushing me? Or why are you yada, yada, yada? And he pushes your arm this way, and then you push your arm this way as he's pushing it that way, right?
Right.
That is legally, maybe not in your opinion, maybe you think big deal, we're all grown men, he's just trying to get some understanding. Remember, we told you, now's not the time. He's not required to explain shit to you. If he pushes you this way and then you push this way, that is legally resisting. It is. It's an involuntary.
Legally speaking, maybe not rightfully speaking, but
Right.
legally speaking, yes.
Right. How hard is it when you believe you've been wronged, when you believe you've been treated poorly, and the person that's doing it is behind you? How hard is it to not do this? It's so hard.
Hey, let me chime in just real quick, Mike. I want to say this. I know you were going somewhere. So when I learned my interactions with police from being in prison, and I learned it from the old school guys in prison. When I first got to prison, I was a young hothead. I was 19 years old. The COs would see me in the hall and say, tuck your shirt, or you're not shaved properly, et cetera, et cetera. And I would argue with them. And the old heads would be like, dude, look, do what you want to do under their nose, but don't argue them face to face. They're just going to call the riot squad, kick your ass, and put you in the hole. So we learned to just smile, say yes sir, no sir, and keep it moving with these COs so they couldn't fuck with us. Look, I'm not saying allow them to victimize you
No.
or violate your civil rights. I definitely am not saying that. But in little encounters, I want as quick and clean of an encounter with police as I can get so I can keep my day moving, you know? And I think when I say that, some people are misunderstanding me saying, let the cops walk all over you. No,
Nobody said
I'm
that.
saying,
I want to
yeah,
address this comment. I want to help a gentleman in the comments section called Raheem Frank. And he says, I guess
okay,
knee on your neck and you can't breathe is resisting. Raheem, I want to help you. I want to help you understand so that people can understand you. I just said, I don't know who you're talking to. Maybe it's someone else in the comments, because I just said, and Scarface just said, that he was not resisting. Right? When the knee was on his neck,
that he was murdered.
he was not. We said that. So I know you hurt. I know you're upset. I know you're emotional. When you look at rioting and the people that criticize rioting, rioting is just society throwing a temper tantrum. You know, and
Right?
you throw a temper tantrum when you're hurt and you can't express it. I know you're hurting. I know it is wrong. But if you want people to take you seriously, and again, if you don't, say whatever you want. You have to stop. If you want people to take you seriously, you can't make statements like that. You can't say to a person who just explained to you what resisting arrest is, I guess a knee on your neck and you can't breathe is resisting, right after they said that that is not. I'm giving you
Right.
information. Do with it what you want. If you want to change the world, or you want to help people, or you want to be taken seriously, you have to start from a place of honesty. If the first words out of your mouth are, you can rob a store, and then the police can unlawfully beat the crap out of you. But if you start the story with, I wasn't doing anything and the police beat me up, the rest of your story doesn't help. The guy with the bow and arrow. Remember the guy with the bow and arrow
Yes.
that got
Yes.
the shit beat out of him, and he's on video all bloody, and he says, what do
Two black
he
guys,
said,
two African Americans beat me up for
through the
saying
window,
all lives matter.
through the window.
Right.
And then there was a
Right.
video of him outside his car pointing a bow at the crowd and getting beat up.
By a multiracial crowd.
By everybody. Everything that guy has to say is called into question. If he had started with, I felt like I was in danger. I was in my car. My kids were in here. I didn't know what to do. I got out of my car with my bow because it was the only weapon I had. And then a crowd of people beat the shit out of me. Right? You would then be more inclined to listen to whatever else he had to say after seeing the video. But because he starts with a lie, we know that his biases or his dishonesty, or we know he was doing something he shouldn't do. So if you want people to take you seriously, you have to be telling the truth. You have to be honest with them and honest with yourself. But,
Correct.
you know, people don't know when they're being detained, whether it's legal or not, because they don't and that's fine that you don't know, but you need to know that you don't know, right? You don't know what the information the cop's actually working with, and he's not always required to tell you. He's not always required to tell you why he's detaining you. You don't have to have committed a crime for him to detain you. If you resist his attempts to detain you or arrest you, you can be resisting arrest and not even know it. And a guy brought up a good point, and that's being brought up. You know, we're biologically wired. Like I said, and I said this, so I don't know who you're arguing with. We're biologically wired to try to turn around and address the person that's doing these things to us. But it, by definition, is resisting. You're one step closer to staying safer and reaching an understanding if you understand that. Right? Let's talk about my You want to hear about the guy that died in my custody, right?
I do.
Eerily similar. And you know, I had a case that was just like the Ahmaud Arbery case. I had an identical case, except the guy didn't die at the end.
That you were involved in the shooting, or the citizens were?
I was I investigated it. I investigated
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
I investigated it. It was a wild ride. If we have time, I'll tell that story. So we got a call that a guy was experiencing home invasion. And he said tons of people were trying to break into his house, and he had a gun, and he was trying to fend them off. Right?
Right.
And so again, to understand that officer perspective, that when we arrive, that's what we're arriving to. There's only one way to go to that call. You know, you go in hot. You can't say,
Right.
well, I need to make sure that I see what's going on, because, again, we're talking about that sliding scale. If I don't come in hot, right, I run the risk of coming in too cold. So what do you want me to do? Do I want to make sure that only I get killed? Or do I want to maybe make sure someone else gets hurt or killed? Like, and the truth, we've been trying to tell you all along, the right answer is in the middle and nobody knows it. So
Right.
we go to the house and he's in, and I can't remember whether we heard gunshots or the dispatcher heard gunshots, but the front door was locked. We busted in the door. We were trying to talk to him on the phone. We're trying to tell him it's us coming in. You know, we don't see anybody. We're here to help. Don't shoot at us. Don't fight us. You know, it's us. Because he called us.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Because those are those types of scenarios where people get crossed up, where it's the wrong house or the person that called ends up getting, you know what I mean? We tried very hard to make sure he understood. We even waited outside because we didn't hear fighting or gunfighting or anything like that. We waited outside, made sure he knew it was us. So then we said, we're coming in, we're busting the door, we're coming in to do our thing. Stay right where you are. Just stay down. Put your gun down, stay down. We get in there, and he's in his bedroom, and he has taken an FN-57 pistol, which shoots those little, it's like kind of halfway between a pistol and a rifle round. It's
Pierces armor.
They sell an armor-piercing
Right.
version. It got a reputation as being an armor-piercing gun. Anyway, it's an expensive gun. He had taken 2 magazines, and it has like a 20-round magazine, and he'd shot his whole house with this gun, right? And he's on the bed, and he's in some little skimpy boxers only, and he's soaked with sweat. And we look around, and there's no one here, right? Now, you could say it's my bias. You could accuse me of profiling him. You could accuse me of being racist. You could accuse me of a lot of things, but anyone with a brain right now will look at this gentleman and say, oh, this dude's on drugs, right? He's done shot up his whole house by himself. No one's in here. The door was locked, and now he's soaked with sweat and talking gibberish. So we're like, okay, dude's on drugs. We didn't immediately try to put our hands on him. We did our best to talk to him, right? But he's on drugs. There's no reasoning with him, right? Real quick aside, in no way am I relating this case to the recent in custody death case. I'm just explaining my perspective on I've had someone die in my custody and how it can happen. Not every single person that died. So hopefully when I'm done with the story, you go, oh shit, you know, what is he supposed to do? So we tell the guy, hey, we're here to help you. We don't think there's anyone in here. And he's trying to tell us the guys that broke in. No one had broke in. There was no signs of anything, you know. There was the bedroom was a wreck. The rest of the house was fine. He just was in his bedroom shooting it up. And he stood up on his bed, hulked out, and picked. I was at the door. There was 6 or 7 of us in the room, every single one of them over 6 feet tall and over 200 pounds, right? So he scanned, saw that I was the weakest link, and charged right at me, right? Ah! And I said, oh, shit. And over he comes. He's on top of me. So now this crazed person that we're pretty sure has hallucinated this whole thing, is on drugs, is now on top. Not only are they on top of one of I'm talking about my other guys. He's on top of me. Right? He's on top of not only their supervisor, the smallest guy on the shift, and one of their brothers. Right? Like, so all the other officers see him on top of me. So now, again, we're back in that impossible position. Right? I had enough sensitivity and enough experience that I realized he's not trying to hurt me. Luckily, I realized that. Because how else would an officer know that? Being underneath a guy. And again, I'm talking about being underneath a guy. That's why this situation is totally different. You know what I mean? So they start grabbing him. Luckily, I was able to say, okay, it's just okay. I'm okay, guys. I'm okay. There was plenty of us. There was enough of us that we could hold him down. But now, and this dude, when they say that meth strength or that crack strength or that coke, whatever he was on, I don't even actually remember what specifically he was on or what mix. This dude was impossibly strong. 6 or 7 adult males holding down 2 people per arm, 2 people per leg, person holding down his body. And we ran into the issue of he's so strong that we are having trouble holding him down. But if you hold someone down for too long, that's dangerous. Someone's going to get hurt. Right?
Right.
So we got him in handcuffs eventually, but it was tough. Right? And now, why are we putting him in handcuffs if he didn't do anything? Well, he is a danger to himself and others. Does that if and people are like, he didn't hurt anyone? Well, he hurt me, kinda. Maybe on accident. Maybe he was trying to get away. Maybe he thought we were bad guys. Maybe a lot of things. We're not mind readers and we can't know. We know he was in distress. He thought people were in his home. He'd taken a gun and shot up his own whole house, and then charged and landed on top of me. What am I supposed to do? So we hold him down and we put him in handcuffs, and I'm going to take him to the hospital. He won't let the EMTs near him, right? He's a danger to the EMTs, all right? So we put him in the ambulance. I go with him. And this is a big difference between, I think that's part of the problem is I used force on a lot of people. And very rarely, dude, you could beat a dude's ass and be his friend on the way to the jail if he knows he was wrong. Like I've had knockdown, drag out fights with dudes. And by the end of the jail, he's like, man, I'm really sorry. I was like, man, I know, man. It's cool. He's like, I love you, man. I'm like, yeah, I love you too. Like we both had a job to do. We did our job. I won tonight. That's like all that happened. It's not personal. But I'm riding to the hospital with this guy, and I'm trying to talk to him, and I'm trying to get his name. I'm trying to find out what's happening. And it is clear that basically he's dying. His heart, he can't slow down. His vitals are out of control. The EMTs don't look hopeful. They're trying. They're helping. And I'm trying to talk to him. I'm trying to tell him I'm his friend. I'm trying to tell him I'm there to help him. That I don't want him to hurt. I don't want him to, and they wheeled him to the hospital, and the doctor said, can we unhandcuff him? And I said, absolutely. I said, you understand that like he's flailing around and trying, and like he could be a danger. And he said, I don't think it's going to be a problem. And that guy didn't make it. And I think about that dude all the time.
What was the cause of death?
So I want to say for sure, it was his heart. Basically, I don't want to say the wrong thing, and and I want to say incorrectly. Basically, when it was explained to us in layman's terms for us police officers, the doctors said basically his heart exploded. Basically he had a massive,
drugs?
Yeah. Well, yes. So he tested positive for like a ton of drugs, and people. So the battle that I have when I watch this current incident is I know that some people are taking, issue with, when they do the autopsy and they try to find out how the guy really died, which like the argument can be made that no matter what they find, and this is why it's similar to my case and this is the only way it relates. This is why I'm relating it. Regardless of what they find, the question remains, would he be alive had we not went in his house? Right?
Right.
So you could argue, yes, if he just rode out that high or gone through whatever he was going through, he could have woken up the next day. But he called us and said there was people in our house, So this guy died while I was doing my level best in an my job is to protect him and protect anyone else and protect myself. And he died, right? And at the time that we arrested him, he was unarmed. At the time I took him to the hospital, I wasn't taking him to jail. I wasn't trying to really arrest him with charges. I didn't really even have any charges. He was just a danger to himself and others. The police can take you into custody for that. And that guy died. And I think about him all the time. I think about that guy all the time. And I'm like, man, that sucks to be put in a situation where there's zero outcomes where I can win. Like win, like be like not win, not to sound insensitive, but there's no good ways. You're not getting
that it ends well.
Not for anybody.
Right.
Not for him, not for his family, and not for any of us that were involved.
Well, I'll say, Mike, that's a wild story, and I wouldn't in any way compare that to the situation with George Floyd. You had a guy that had fired 20 gunshots, and I'm sure if somebody calls 911 and says his house is surrounded by people shooting at it, you're going to get a different response. But yeah, that's a crazy scenario, and I couldn't imagine. That's why I would never sign up to be a police officer. My wife asked me one time, she said, if you talk now that you wish you had not did a lot of the stuff from your youth, she said, could you ever imagine your life totally different, where you didn't get in any trouble, and you signed up at the police academy when you were 18? And I was like, no. And the reason is, I've said this before, and maybe you can enlighten me, because I'm sure I'm generalizing here. But I told my wife, I said, I don't have the personality to think that I have a right to police my fellow citizens. I would feel uncomfortable riding around telling my fellow citizens what to do. Now, I get it. There's a need for policing. I get that. And somebody's got to do it. I'm just saying, I don't think I'm character suited or psychologically suited to do it. So therefore, I would qualify myself from the gate.
Yeah, well, that's precisely why you should be one. You know?
Really?
Well, yeah,
I,
if you recognize that power as a burden and a responsibility and not as a privilege or a benefit, you are uniquely qualified to wield that power. You know, the guy that wants to be king the least should be the king. The guy that wants to have the guy that doesn't want to have the sword or the hammer or the gun is the one that you should trust with it.
So let me say, it's funny you said that, and this is kind of off subject, but the Facebook group that you're a part of, we got 24K members. Every week I have people messaging me, I want to be an admin. Will you make me a moderator? Will you make me an admin? Now, some of them just want to help out.
Yeah.
But in my experience, when people message me asking to be an admin, it ends bad. They go overboard. So what I do is single people out. Say, hey, dude, will you be an admin for me? Oh, well, Face, I don't know, but I'll give it a try.
That's the
And
best
they always
guy.
give it back.
That's the best guy.
Yeah. Crazy, man.
Absolutely. I think people understanding each side is important. It's and I when you're the wronged party, you know, if we're talking about unlawful uses of force, when you are the wronged party, which by party I just mean citizens, and you can divide yourselves up into all the different little divisions that you want. So long as it's us versus them, or this side versus that side, and that could be left, right, white, black, police, not police, right? You can divide
Right.
yourself up however you want. Anytime you have two sides to something, there is zero chance of resolution if you don't come to understand the other side. Zero. Unless you're talking about, you know, if you don't understand how the problem started, you can't find a solution for it. If you don't understand why people are doing the things they're doing, you're not going to get them to stop. That's just a fact.
I think that I really, my thought on that is, with these interactions that end badly with police and citizens, I've seen it here in my city where they had a meeting, a town hall meeting of citizens and police, and they discussed this stuff, so on and so forth. But I'm going to be honest. The prosecuting attorney was there, the chief of police, etc. And there was a dialogue, but it didn't really feel like the police were listening. It just didn't feel like it. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just assuming that they weren't listening. But, I can tell you, when we started this conversation.
Wait.
Go
Sorry.
ahead. Go ahead.
If you ask those police officers and stuff there what they thought happened, they would
probably say they didn't make a dent.
We weren't. They'd say you weren't listening.
Right. And that's that divide, But I'll just say, when we started this, we talked about, the need for more communication and the need for an understanding. And also I said that I believe that somebody today, I was arguing on my Facebook, I've been ranting for a week. Well, for several days about this and police and rioting and so on and so forth. And I've lost a lot of people off my Facebook because of it. Well, one friend today said, Face, what's your solution? He said, do you feel that all cops are like this? And I said, no, I feel like just like every other human gathering, there's a percentage. It's like the yin and yang. There's a little bit of good and bad in everything. And I believe that these bad cops, for one, mess it up for the rest. But then secondly, I believe that brotherhood you talked about earlier, a lot of times the cops that aren't necessarily bad don't strongly reprimand the bad cops when they're doing bad shit. So therefore, it makes it look like a bigger issue. Like all the cops are complicit.
Yeah.
So I think that the first step is the good officers that are out there have to speak up. They got to stand up. Those three cops that stood around while George was being murdered should have stopped that shit. They should have stopped it. They
Yeah.
should have said, "Get your knee off of his neck." And that's why people are judging all cops, because they see three other cops standing there letting it happen.
And the biggest, you're 100% right, that the people, and again, it goes to both sides. You guys out there, and we've already seen it start to happen. If you look at footage and you see, not only do you see the lines of protesters standing between the police and the rioters, and you see the police officers taking a knee and walking with the citizens.
Right.
It can happen. It is happening. Right? So, people say that, God, I want to help these guys in the comment section. You and I both know about that comment section, man. I want to help you. If a person comes up and says they want to help you, and then you start in on them, like, I want to help you, man. But both sides of every issue have to understand the other. The good cops who understand proper use of force need to help weed out the bad cops who don't understand use of force, or who understand it and break the rules or break the laws.
Right.
A huge issue for that guy, and for anyone on any side of anything. So if you were a rioter or a protester, right? Those protesters that stand between the rioters and the police get hit by the rioters.
Right.
Right? The police officers that stand between other police and the citizen get blackballed and, can get hurt or get run off or get, this is my passion and my dream and my calling, but this is also how I feed my family. This is also my identity. To cross that line, to ask someone to cross the line. The problem is, and you and I are both, actually, it's funny, people will not understand this. Scarface and I are both actually pretty politically moderate, all things considered, but when you're sort of reasonable, people from the other side tend to think you're an extremist. You know what I mean? Like if you think, like when I would tell other police officers, like, hey, you can't stop a guy because he just said this. They're like, oh, you're a bleeding heart liberal. But then if I say, hey, that guy is definitely resisting arrest, it's like, oh, you're an alt-right Nazi. It's like, no, like there's lots of gray.
Well, you know what's
there's lots.
I got a remark on that all week. On my friends list, I've been called a liberal. I've been called a black extremist. I've been called racist toward white people. Yet, from what you're telling me in the comments today, I'm totally different. And that's
right.
That's the ridiculousness of it. You cannot be me. I take each situation as it comes. And
as best we can, while acknowledging our own biases, we do that as best we can.
Right. And I do have my own biases based on my own life experiences, but I will say that I'm open to seeing every angle of things. I try to, I just fear that a lot of other people don't have that open-mindedness, and that's why sometimes this sounds weird, but I'll approach somebody, and if I sense they're closed-minded, I go closed-minded on them. I don't know if that makes sense, but I just feel like I'm not going to have dialogue with you if you're not going to give any at all, and that's, can't make any leadway that way.
Yeah, because we've already talked about, if it's not effective, if it's not going to help, why do it? Why are you doing that to yourself? Why are you putting yourself in a position to be hurt either emotionally or in some cases physically to argue or dispute something in a way that's not going to help?
Right.
I think we do need to stand up. I think we do need to have these conversations. I did not want to have this conversation. I did not want to do this because I knew I was going to say things that would be misunderstood. I know that maybe YouTube won't show this video, or as much or whatever. Like, I know all that's going to happen.
Right.
But I thought if there's at least a couple dudes, because what does every fire start with? Fire starts with a spark. If there's a couple dudes that can see an ex-con and an ex-cop who are actually kind of right here, and then maybe one of them this way and one of them that way.
Right.
To get all you folks out here to just say, and you can not, I don't even care if you change your belief. You could say, I think there should be no police, and I think that there should be no government. You could be a total anarchist, and that's your belief. I'm not saying change your belief. I'm saying if you want to change anything, you have to understand how it really is. You have to know how the law works before you start complaining about how it works. You have to know how the police are thinking before you start complaining about what they're doing. About use of force, like physical use of force, the police have a lot more leeway legally than most people think they do.
Right.
The police can punch people in the face.
I've
Most
seen
people,
that.
there's people that think that the police can't punch you. They think I once fought with a guy. And back to this example. This is like a very important example because it seems so minor, but it represents that fundamental misunderstanding. People don't know when the police can use force.
Right.
If the police grab a guy and he's just trying to pull away or get away, they can use essentially what amounts to wrestling or grappling to force him to the ground, right? If he turns around and grabs the police officer or pushes away or extends any hand towards the police officer is no longer legally required to wrestle with you.
Right.
I grabbed a guy. He turned around and grabbed the front of my shirt. We were evenly matched in size and strength, so it wasn't like I was arresting a kid. I would say it wasn't like I was bigger than him, but let's face it, I'm not bigger than anybody. But we were equally matched. He was grabbing me. I was grabbing him. He had broken the law, for sure. 100% had broken the law. And not a lame law that you think shouldn't exist. It was a good law. I won't get into details of the case. But I remember he was grabbing me and like trying to push me backwards, and I punched him in the face. And he said, "You're not supposed to punch me in the face." And I said, "What?" And I punched him in the face again. He was fighting with me. And then he got punched, and he was bleeding out of his nose, and he says, "You're not supposed to punch me. You're supposed to try and wrestle me. I know the law." During the fight.
Wow.
And I'm like, maybe you think that should be true, but it's not true.
So I'll say this in regard to punching. There's a lot of videos out of cops punching people, and I actually knew that it was a legal technique in police forces. The thing that always looks bad is when these officers with the struggling woman punch her. Okay, Mike, you have an MMA background. I've personally witnessed you fight. I've personally witnessed you fight men almost twice your size. I know for a fact that if you so choose, you can restrain any woman without punching her in her face. I know you can. And when I see a man, you're a little man. You're little.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not because of size and strength, and it's not even because of technique.
Right. So when I see these officers that are 220 pounds punching a female, regardless of what she did, regardless if it's a legal technique, I just can't respect it because I, as a man who has fought many times, who trains to fight, I know for a fact that there's not many women out there that
I was going to say that.
There's some.
Now, there's some girls out there that give us some problems.
But I seen one where there was a woman who was every bit of 50 years old. She starts resisting, and the cop just starts waylaying her in the face. And I'm like, dude, that's where I feel the racial bias comes in because she was a black lady, and I cannot help but feel if she had been an old white lady that he would have seen it as somebody's grandma or somebody's aunt. Maybe I'm wrong, but regardless, just either way, regardless of the race, I just feel punching female suspects is outrageous.
Yeah.
I
That
feel like there's so
in
many other ways you can restrain. I know that's off
and I
subject.
No, it's 100% on subject. I think we were off subject, and that is actually the subject. um,
Right.
it comes from emotion. He is I am not I was not capable of physically controlling people during uses of force, and I had a lot of uses of force. I chased a lot of dudes. I fought a lot of dudes. I was in car chases, foot chases, out in the woods, on bloodhound trails, tracking armed robbers. Um, I was not successful in those uses of force because I was big and strong. I was not successful in those uses of force because I'm good at fighting. I was
Right.
successful in those uses of force because I maintained my composure.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I was able to maintain my composure. And if they rolled over and their foot hit me a little bit, or if, they pushed me a little bit, I didn't flip out because I'd been there before. I'd been punched and kicked. I'd fallen. It's not a big deal. I'm aware of when I'm in danger and when I'm not. And it
Right.
comes down to a lack of training and experience getting hit. Because the most important lesson in all of martial arts and fight training is getting hit, taking that first shot.
Well, yeah, I agree, Mike. I think that's the other thing I always remark on this. Back in the day, and I think we have a tendency to think fondly of stuff from back in the day, but I believe this is true. Cops back then were so much more likely to snatch you up and fight you before they would pull a gun and shoot you. At least it seems that way. That's
Yeah,
what I
no.
remember from the '90s.
Well,
You know,
because whether justifiably or unjustifiably, before the age of cameras, the cops got away with more. They got away with doing things probably that they weren't supposed to do. But even now, I'll tell you a fact. I'll tell you a fact. You want to hear about, police corruption? Any police corruption is bad. This is a relatively weird and sort of minor form of police corruption. The punch in the face.
right,
I'd punch a dude in the face in a minute. Boom. I'd punch him in the face, and then I would write in the report that I punched him in the face because I was well up to speed on my use of force law, the case law surrounding it. I knew the department policies. You couldn't mess with me. I was like the encyclopedia. I was the guy on the shift everyone called when they had a question about this stuff. I'd
right,
punch a dude straight in the face, on camera, in front of people, then write in the report that I punched him in the face, why I punched him in the face, and I would be glad to go and testify in court why I punched him in the face. It was the correct
right.
move at the right time. I was 100% confident. I'd slide that report across the desk to my sergeant, and he would look in that thing and go, you need to write that you tried to use a brachial stun. And I was like, I didn't try to use a brachial stun, Sergeant. It wasn't time for a brachial stun. I punched him. And they're like, you struck him with your forearm? And I'm like, no, with my fist in his mouth. I was trying to knock him unconscious. He was trying to
Right,
hurt me. He was trying to hurt me, so I was trying to knock him out so that I didn't have to kill him. You know?
right.
Um, and the
And
Sarge was
and
like, so the Sarge had bad information. He felt pressure because of public perception. He,
right,
his his decision making was influenced by public perception that we couldn't do that. And it
right,
confused the whole thing. So now he thinks, okay, we can't be punching people. Really, we can be punching people, but we can't let people know that that's okay. So now you've got a crowd of people who are now emboldened by now more people think that we can't.
right,
Instead of just coming out and explaining, no, yeah, he totally punched him. He was supposed to. I'm glad he did. In fact, he probably should have punched him more based on the facts of this case. And then just deal with a little bit of flack. It's just like anything else. If you're real honest with a person early on, it
right.
helps instead of being way dishonest with them later.
Facts. Mike, can I ask you? I know we're probably getting close to the end here. Why did you leave the police force?
I was a rat abandoning a sinking ship.
Okay.
you
So
know,
is it some of the stuff we've discussed here
I,
today?
I saw all this coming. I saw it
Right,
all coming. I moved from a rural department where we just were cowboys and just did whatever we want and whatever we wanted. And we actually had people sort of respected us, and we didn't have protests. And people didn't argue with what we were doing because they knew what time it was when we showed up. It was one of those, and some of it was because it was backwards. Some of it was because some of that was because we were doing the right things, and some of it was because we were doing the wrong things, but for better or
right,
for worse, that's just the way it was. Again, not talking about what's right and wrong. I'm just talking about how it was. Um,
right.
I moved to a more like metropolitan type department where they didn't subscribe to the idea that prevention of crime was the number one. The detection, the prevention, detection, and prosecution of crime was not the main mission. Like finding
Right.
bad guys and putting them in jail was not the main thing that we were doing. And I was like, this is weird. And every time something would happen, you get in trouble. And I was just like, what? It was the sort of, it's like you would fight a guy and they would say, okay, you didn't do anything wrong, but you didn't fill out this form right, so we're writing you up. And then they tell the people, yeah, we wrote him up. Instead of telling them, no, you didn't do anything wrong. Get out of my office. You know?
Got you.
So
Got
so what people are clamoring for, the thing that I'm most scared of is if the government and police are not more honest and forthcoming about how things really are and say, let's work together to fix it. I'm more worried about, I mean, that's terrible. No, I'm not more worried. Let me make it clear. I'm not more worried. I am also worried that a lot of the people who don't understand what is happening are going to get what they're asking for. And what they're asking for is a police force that's completely powerless and helpless. And when they get that, they're like, okay, yeah, the police can't mess with this anymore. Excuse me, officer, there's people breaking into my house right now. And the officer has to come and ask them politely if they can, if they can arrest
right.
them, you know?
I think there's got to be a happy medium, though. I do. I don't think, I know that's not what I'm asking for when I protest the police's behavior. I'm asking for the police to, a lot of times, like I said, some police officers come in hot on every call. That's what it feels like. And again, I think that it's a certain personality of cop. I think that there's a couple in every department, and those couple can make the whole department look bad.
Yeah.
I think that there is good officers out there. I know there is. I've dealt with them. But it's the same as, people don't realize when they give certain arguments, they're actually contradicting themselves, because people say, you guys are rioting and tearing shit up because you think all cops are bad, but all cops aren't bad. And I say, wait a minute, you say you guys,
Yeah,
but
who's you?
not
What do you mean, you people?
right. Well, not everybody protesting is tearing shit up.
Yes,
Okay, people out
exactly.
there that are peacefully protesting. So the same argument you're making for not judging all cops, you're judging all protesters. So
I,
it's a human thing, dude.
And then when you flip that around again the other way, if we're trying to reach an understanding, I saw a girl, she shared a meme that said, in defending the protesters and rioters and looting, she says, so if, the rioters and looters and stuff like that, cast a bad light. I don't remember the exact wording, but basically insinuating that people were judging the protesters by the rioters and the looters. They said, well, what does it mean when a small percentage of officers is bad? What does that do to all the good officers? And I'm like, well, it casts a lot of shadow and doubt on them and makes their efforts less effective, and it undermines what they're doing.
Right.
Like
I
that's why
agree.
the officers are like, so you're absolutely right. Every argument that either side, and I always have to put side in quote because it's one. There's one side, and that's justice,
Correct.
humanity, people. That's ultimately the goal. Sometimes we have to fragment to ultimately get there,
We
but
have different ideas about how to reach it.
yeah, the two sides, almost everything that they're saying, you could just flip
Right.
the subject and the subject and the predicate. I don't know. This ain't no damn English channel, right? You could almost flip the two topics, and the same argument could be made. The big step for everyone is to listen to what Scarface is saying and realize once you make and you don't have to agree with their argument, but once you understand that argument could be just flipped like that, and you just know that that's true, you can start forming better ones.
Right. Facts. 100, Mike. Well, I'll tell you, man, I don't know where we're at in this video, but I want to say, for me, it was a great discussion. The people out there that are listening, I want to reiterate one more time. When Charlottesville happened, I was at ground zero. I literally was a street over when Heather Heyer was ran over. Um, I go to these protests and gatherings regularly when they happen. Tomorrow, I'm going to DC for a large gathering. Um, I stay on the front lines of this. I want to see change. Um, and I think that we all, one thing Mike has said today that I strongly agree with is we got to reach understanding on both sides. That is a big part of it. It is. Because if we don't do that, we're getting nowhere. Um, and I do think departments need to affect change and change some of their policies, but that's a bigger issue.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree that change could be helpful. My message has been just to I do want to sum up because people's biases um, have colored me in a light that's not what I'm saying. You know what I mean? I do think that they need to change, but I do also think that the good police who sometimes a guy earned his ass whipping by the police. That does happen. You you think that, like, if you think that no police use of force, if you're in the group that wants to abolish police and live in anarchy and the police can never do anything to anybody, I hope that you can achieve the utopia that you think that will be. I don't want to live there. When a dude is trying to, like, steal my shit or set my house on fire or kill me or kill my family, I do want some people around that can sort of help with that. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
I'm not 100% ready. Now, I do believe in being good at fighting. I do believe in protecting yourself. I do believe in being armed to protect yourself. I believe in all that. But I'm not quite
Or,
ready to live in a society with no police.
nor am I.
Sometimes a dude got his ass whipping all the way the honest way. And
Mhm.
sometimes the police are using force that is unlawful, unjustified, and is a violation of their rights. Both those things happen. The key will be hopefully you understanding that while George Floyd was murdered, right, and that was 100% unjustified, that doesn't mean the next time the police stop you to ask you a question or put a hand on your arm, that doesn't mean that that's you.
Right.
You know, I don't want you to get confused and think, "Oh, I'm being unjustly treated." That might not be true, and it's possible for you to not even know. If the officer's investigating something and he doesn't immediately explain to you what it is, it might be because he's a shithead that doesn't know and he hasn't figured it out and he hasn't made up some shit yet. I'll give you
Right.
that. I'm not saying that's not true, but it also might be because if he tells you, it might mess it up. You know, because if you are the bad guy, which he doesn't know yet, that'll mess it up. So what Scarface said about he feels for you and he agrees with you and he understands, and I'm trying to tell you the same thing whether you believe it or not. We just don't want you to get hurt. We want you to make it to
Right.
court to fight. We want you to make it to, the peaceful protests that people who have the power to fix things will actually listen to, right?
Mhm.
I think, and now if you want to be a martyr and you want to be a revolutionary, go ahead and get down, homie. You don't have to listen to anybody. You don't have to care what anyone thinks. But if you really want us all to come together, you do need to understand the other side.
I'm with you, Mike. I'm with you on that, man. Great
I
discussion.
I
I,
thank you
I,
so much, man.
I think good ground was covered for the people that are actually listening.
Yeah.
That sometimes when you're angry, it's hard to listen to any dissenting opinion on what you're talking about. And I'm guilty of that as well. The last couple of days, like I said, if you look on my Facebook, you'll see, and I'm sure you've seen it. You're on my Facebook. Um,
Yeah.
I've been on a nonstop rant because I'm angry, and it's been as such that pretty much anybody coming on trying to minimize what's happened with George Floyd, etc., has been cussed out and unfriended. And maybe I'm wrong for that. Maybe I'm not.
No, not that case. Not in that case. There's no question. I don't need anything from anybody that is confused about that case.
Correct.
My issue is people on either side who are conflating that case with other cases.
Right.
I don't even mean
Right.
marginal cases. Like, there's cases that you and I would disagree on where, like, another thing that people don't understand, it is possible. There's case law that supports the police shooting a person who is unarmed. Maybe you don't think it's right. Maybe you
Right.
don't think it should be legal,
Right.
but it is. So I'm not talking about every case. That case in particular, I don't need to see any more. I don't need any more evidence. You're not going to come up with anything. There's only one scenario. There's only one scenario where that's possible, and that's if a video surfaced proving that George Floyd was some sort of alien or zombie or monster, and they had tried everything else, and they'd been fighting him for 6 hours, and
Mm.
he'd killed 1,000 people and said he was going to kill another 1,000 people, and then maybe you could justify, oh, this is the only way.
Right.
But do you know what that's beyond? Do you know what we call that? That's beyond a reasonable doubt, because that's not a
Right.
reasonable doubt.
Right.
So
Right.
that means that guy should be convicted. There's nothing that there's no dissenting opinion that's worth anything. Where we need to go, where you and I need to figure out, is all that in between space that we've come back to over and over again. And
Right.
understand that not every case is that case. And also, not every case is my case, where I hope, and someone will argue, but I don't, where I did everything I could to not have that guy die, you know?
Right. Right.
Whereas on this side, this guy did everything he could to make that guy die. And that the truth is, almost every other case is in between. I appreciate you so much, Scarface. I thank you so much. I value our friendship.
Likewise,
Uh,
brother.
and,
Likewise.
and I really hope that some people extracted some value from this, even if just a couple. Hopefully you can extend, share this information with other people, and hopefully, we reach some understanding. Thank you, guys.
Hey, Mike, I'm gonna drop in at the gym someday. I swear, man.
We'll see you soon.
Hey, brother, keep doing it, man. We'll see you soon. Thanks for having me.